Recording is started.
Yeah,
Yes, now we are. Now we are. Can start.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second half of the Inspired Leadership Conference 2020. Being dressed and sitting in home today, hosting such a great event virtually, I'm wondering, is this the new normal? Well, this may sound like a facetious question, but I'm serious. Most of us have been sitting in the comforts of our homes for months together now and working simultaneously. Is this going to have a lasting effect on workplaces and the way we function professionally? Well, the next segment of the conference may help us get some answers. We will now begin with our second panel discussion for today, which is going to be revolving around the topic the new normal, digitized workplaces, and the expectations from academia. How COVID-19 pandemic has had implications on the nature of work, the integration of technology and workplaces, and introduction of tech-driven practices in an unprecedented and pressured manner. On that note, let me introduce you and greet you to the esteemed panelists. I would be just going alphabetically. We have with us Mr. Nischay Suri. Mr. Suri is the president of Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa at EdCast. Prior to EdCast, Mr. Suri has been working as a senior partner with KPMG in India and heading the KPMG Academy. He has over 2 decades of rich experience in areas of HR and strategy, transformation, leadership, talent management, learning and development, and rewards working with clients over 25 countries. Sir, we welcome you.
But the most important thing of Nischay, he was like the part of the co-founding team of Soil. He was the first president of Soil. You missed that out.
Yay!
Right, sir. Thank you, Mr. Suri. We welcome you. Well, now we'll go to Mr. Chopra, the Chief Human Resource, Vigilance and Business Support Group Officer at Gati Limited. Mr. Chopra leads people strategy to drive cultural transformation for more than 5,000 organizations and over 300 locations. He is seasoned HR professional with more than 20 years of experience in various aspects of human resource management. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Our
Thank
next
you, sir.
panelist, thank you, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Rajesh Chandran. He's the Global Head Talent Acquisition at ITC Infotech. Prior to human resource, he has had 14 years of experience in the enterprise products and service, adding hands-on business exposure. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to.
Our final panelist and also the moderator for the discussion, let's welcome Mr. Patrick Newell, presently working as a professor of Shizenkan University, Japan. He is a vision navigator and learning activist and also the founder of 21 Foundations and program director at Singularity U, Japan. He's a co-founder of Tokyo International School and TEDx Tokyo. The platform is all yours, Mr. Newell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's quite different this year from last year. I remember being face to face with everybody with the smells and tastes and sounds of India. And now I just am in this room here by myself. A mono sound will be coming in a minute probably, but it's quite different, but still feel the love and feel the connection with everybody. And it's just so wonderful that we're doing this online. And thank you for the students for all of your hard work. I don't know if it was mentioned or not, but we did a virtual tour. The students from Shizenkan University had the opportunity to see India, and the students from Soil got an opportunity to see Japan and Tokyo. And it was really fun. We had a lot of live streaming, a lot of interaction, and it was absolutely wonderful. And the survey we did, we had so much positive response that I hope that we will do it again next year. And I love this student-led, student-driven initiative. So thank you very much, all of you, for hosting this today. So I'd like to kind of start, we're going to do the panel discussion in kind of an old Aristotle fashion. And we're going to have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So Act 1 is we set the scene. What are things like today? What is our vision? And then Act 2 is what are the challenges? What are the dramas? What's going to get in our way? And Act 3 is what are the solutions that we have? And how can we start to implement some of the solutions today if they're already not being implemented? So that will be the format. But we're going to start with just a short 3-minute introduction from each of the panelists. tell us a little about who you are and kind of maybe why you've been brought into this panel discussion. And let's start with, I guess I'll start with how I see in the screen. Pavel, do you mind starting us, please?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You must have heard this phrase, career planning is oxymoron, and I'm, one of the good example for it. I'm a commerce graduate. I did my master's in computer and joined HR department of GE for a temp assignment for 2-3 months, but never left. I often joke with my colleagues, had I joined sales or legal function to begin with, probably I would have landed anywhere but HR. So you can say I'm in HR by pure accident, but the previous varied experience really helped me to look at things in a slightly different manner. My first job was with G Capital Services, which later became Genpact. I was fortunate to have joined the industry, ITS industry, which was at the cusp of evolution. Imagine the transformation of a company which went from 5,000 employees to 50,000 employees in a flat 7 to 8 years. It went to another round of transformation when it became from a captive of GE, which was more of a cost center, to an independent company which had to fend for its own P&L. So the entire mindset of the population changed internally. And when I look back, I could see the same transformation happen after, let's say if I were to use the word pre-word and post-COVID era, after March 2020. I right now work with a company called Gati. It's a logistics, very pretty renowned name in India, in the B2B logistics space. We were credited for inventing the express distribution in India. We have offices across all over, all the districts in India. And as I mentioned, this is an industry where the remote working or a digital workplace is an unheard, or rather I would go to the extent of prohibited term, because the work is as such, it cannot be done remotely unless you start using robot for everything. Being a logistics player, I've seen, the tragedy and the chaos, yet many stories of resilience during the pandemic and lockdown period. I genuinely hope to contribute to today's discussion on digital workplace from a point of view of an industry where this concept is unheard, at least, some time ago.
My question is, what are you most excited about moving forward? What has you excited right now?
I think the pace of innovation, as there's a famous quote I've heard, that the pandemic at least has proved one thing, that the pace of innovation and change management has accelerated, exponentially. I think this sort of a change has not happened in the last 10, 15 years. Suddenly, probably after, 2 to 3 years from now, things would move very, very rapidly. And I think very, very excited about it, because that would mean that everyone, all of us, our generation, previous generation, the next generation would have to really, really reinvent themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Nishchay, do you mind?
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful being on the panel today. Thank you once again. It's like homecoming for me. I served as a founding member of SOIL and as its first president. So this is a special homecoming for me, as I mentioned. In terms of background, I guess I've spent a majority of my career being a consultant. I consider myself a blue-blooded consultant. Started my journey with a company called Hewitt Associates, spent 12 years with them. That's when I ventured into education and started with this bold experiment called SOIL, which is very successful today. Became the CEO and managing director for Mercer, and then spent 6 years with KPMG as a senior partner. Now I'm with an edtech firm based out of the Valley. It's called Edcast. Edcast is a knowledge-powered AI cloud for unified discovery, personalization, and knowledge management. We work with governments around the world, with academia, with enterprise organizations. In fact, we just launched the first citizen skilling platform with the government of India called Future Skills Prime, with the objective of upskilling Indian citizens in the area of emerging tech and professional skills. So really exciting times for all of us. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And that's what excites me. The ability to create, make a lasting impact in shaping work, shaping workplaces, and preparing workers for this uncertain and unpredictable future. So thank you once again.
So please, Rajesh.
Hey, thanks, Professor. Rajesh Chandran. I'm responsible for a global recruitment for ITC Infotech, based out of Bangalore. My journey started as an engineer in '92 when I completed from University of Madras. Little I thought that I will be in HR one day in my career. I started the journey as a salesperson for technology services and also products. And over the period of time, I found organizations' dependence on people, to quality people, talented people, are making a huge difference to the outcome of the product and services. So that created a interest for me to look at much beyond my original profession. I went into HR, took up the recruitment as a join since then. With regard to what is coming up, especially the last few months has taught us, possibilities are endless, which is what is creating more excitement in the current space. And I'm also feeling that this is a space where ability to contribute by multiple people who need not have the technology aspect in their minds, but product and services created for the humans. Every person will have a space to contribute for the development for the future, especially in the digital space, which is further adding higher excitement as the day-to-day story goes by. So happy to interact, and at the same time, learnings that I can take forward during the session is what I'm looking forward.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I'll do a short introduction. I started my career off in banking. I was actually working for Beverly Hills Bank. I wanted to be rich and famous like Donald Trump. You can tell how kind of young and naive I was back then. And I did that for a while and then decided that I had a crisis and I didn't know what to do. So I traveled around the world and I ended up in this country called India. And I spent about 3 months traveling around India and I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with Asia. And I decided that I wanted to live in Asia, and at least for 5 years. And I decided I was going to move to Tokyo. So 29 years ago, I moved to Tokyo and met a Japanese woman, had children, and then started a school for our children. We started an international school. And I wasn't an educator at the time, but I worked very hard researching all the different models that were available and asking people, what do you remember from school? If you were to make the dream school, what would it look like? And so I created that dream school called Tokyo International School for my children. Became very, very involved in education. But I got frustrated with education because it wasn't changing. And so I heard about this thing called TED. Ironically, we just watched a video with Chris Anderson and Bill Gates. And I got very involved with TED and launching a lot of things with TED, the TEDx movement. We were the first TEDx in the world here in Tokyo. I actually went to TED India, which was quite amazing as well on the Infosys campus. And then I got involved with Singularity University, which is a think tank out of Silicon Valley. It's very much about combining exponential technologies to create an exponential curve like we've never seen before. And I was working with some major Japanese companies trying to help them kind of transform and wake them up a little bit, because Japanese companies have plenty of money, plenty of resources, but they lack that kind of extra step. And maybe one way I would describe it would be that India is absolutely amazing at the 0 to 4 or 5. Japan is absolutely horrible at taking something from 0 to 4 or 5, but they're amazing at taking something from 5 to 10 or 5 to 12 kind of thing. And so I was really trying to figure out how to get them to get Japan to move forward a little bit. And then about 3 years ago, I was also had the honor of being part of starting a new school, which is Shizenkon University, and meeting Anil as well. And so that's my journey. And I'm very passionate about the future of learning, the future of work, and really the future of humans. And if I was to summarize just kind of the philosophy that I've been focusing a lot on these days is 1 + 1. And this is the one that say humans and nature and love and connection together with technology. The 1 + 1 = 11. Creative collective intelligence. How can we move forward together as human beings on Earth in harmony with nature and using technology and the tool to create a better world for all, creative collective intelligence. So that's kind of a summary of me. And I've been in Japan for 29 years and absolutely love it. And again, so sad that we're not in India right now, but anyway, we'll make the best of it today. So that's kind of my summary. I've also put in the chat box here the question for the attendees as well. What are you most excited about now? And I will try to read certain things as we've kind of gone through the program today. But let's start with the first question, which is kind of setting the scene. And let's start with Nishai. And the question is, how do you see our current situation? Give us kind of set the scene. What current situation are we in right now?
So the pandemic, in many ways, I think has accentuated the problem, and I'll come to the problem statement, but equally so accelerated efforts towards embracing the new future and being able to reconcile businesses, mindsets, behaviors with how organizations and businesses have transformed. Now, there are three things that have specifically happened on account of COVID, and I'm going to make reference to COVID just because it's had such a dramatic impact in the way businesses operate. For one, there's greater automation. 2, remote working has scaled. And 3, digitalization. So those 3 have been accelerated on account of the pandemic. Now, why do I talk about accentuation of the problem? Accentuation of the problem because we know for many years we've been behind on the skill curve. That organizations haven't had the necessary knowledge and skills to be able to actually keep in pace with how businesses were changing. On account of the pandemic, that gap between the skill repository available within an organization and what businesses actually need has actually increased dramatically. And on account of the research that comes out of World Economic Forum, 50%, okay, 50% of the jobs will require new core skills by 2025. Now that's a huge skill gap that already existed, that has got further accentuated. The question is, how are we going to bridge that skill gap? How are we going to actually learn at the pace of business? And that, to me, is the million-dollar question that we need to solve for, that organizations need to solve for, to ensure that businesses continue with sustained success and their survival isn't threatened.
Thank you. That was very nice, short and concise. We have about 5 minutes each, actually. We have a little bit more time. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
Yes, so if I may, if I can talk about the vision, other than simply stating the challenge. The vision for me is where we create a knowledge network and exchange, where knowledge flows unobstructed, right? The barriers of knowledge are broken down. The vision for me is about creating an agile organization, an agile workforce. The vision for me entails creating lifelong learners. The vision for me is embracing new workplaces and driving collaboration. The vision for me is how do we make technology an ally? How do we use the power of AI, algorithms, analytics, automation, such that there is human-machine collaboration? And this is all research that's come out of the Future of Work study that NASA conducted. So if the audience is interested in learning more about the future of work, there's these themes that actually occur on account of the intersection between technology, people, place, with culture right at the right center. So the realization of the vision, I think, is what my vision is. And the fulfillment is largely dependent on the various aspects that I talked about.
In the context of academia, could you frame that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So let me look at demand and supply. And now let's be clinical about where does the supply come through in terms of knowledge and skills for industry. There is a mismatch currently that's occurring. It's not an efficient marketplace wherein there is a timely supply of the right demand and skills through academia being one of the most powerful supply chains, right, for industry. So the vision for me is clearly, can we create the right knowledge network and exchange wherein the industry, the government, the NGOs, academia, with the student at the center, and this knowledge is flowing seamlessly to the student, preparing him for industry, preparing him or her for the future, making that individual employable, because employability is a big need and big ask, to ensure that we can actually cash in on the demographic dividend, which is currently a double-edged sword for us. So time is precious. It's important that we utilize this time, act swiftly, ensure that we create this free flow of knowledge between the protagonists that I named, and ensuring that that student has the confidence, the right skill sets, the right attitude, the right orientation, the right foundation to be nearly industry ready. Let me just say nearly industry ready, because it's near impossible to create complete readiness. So just in time, just enough, and just for me, learning.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's, Pavel, do you mind sharing with us how you see the current situation and then your vision for the future?
I think Nisha has really touched upon a very important point. Let me try and build upon that. And before I begin, let me try and pick up an example from a slightly different setup, which I find it incredibly fascinating. There has been more than enough debates on the pros and, while the concept is not new, we have many players in the market. In India, we have Byju's, we have Checks of the world. But no one would have thought that this can be applied to smaller kids of 4 years old for the online teaching. I will not get into a debate of the screenage time or the parental pressure, etc., etc. But I don't think we have paid enough attention on the teachers who were one fine day told that they now have to teach 14, 15-year-old kids through a laptop or iPad in small boxes. And those kids, mind you, will not even sit still in a confined classroom. Okay. Of course, it was a very, very difficult task. The push happened from both the sides, both from the schools and the teacher, as well as from the parents, because parents wanted their kids to be meaningfully engaged, and the school needed to survive. But had I talked about this idea probably, let's say, December last year, nobody would have believed that, nobody would have thought about it. It could have been done. So I gathered 3 lessons from this story. 1, when it comes to survival, all the ifs and the buts go out of the window. 2, our next generation, and I'm talking about the kids as small as 4 and 5 years old, our next generation is far more digital savvy than all our previous generation, including us put together. 3, this one small change, this one small, innovation sort of say, will definitely be a catalyst to bring about another big transformation in many industries, including education, because we've been talking about digital classroom, digital university, etc. for quite some time. But I think after this, the things would not be looked at in the same manner like has been seen in the past. Now, let me try and transpose that in industry that I come from again, logistics. The challenge for us is, even if you want to do remote working, digital workplace, new way of working, it is very difficult because, all of a sudden we don't have teleporting facility as of now, where we can move stuff from point A to point B without a human intervention. We were the first one from as industry standpoint to come back to action after the lockdown was lifted. And I've seen, the drudgery, the chaos, and yet many stories of resilience when people, started operating. In our industry, I was, the work from home or remote working was seen as a prohibited concept because, how do you run an organization where you expect the senior management to sit at home and giving orders to the field team to go out in the field? That cannot happen, So neither the managers and the leaders were ready before the COVID, nor the field staff. Suddenly everything changed. Leaders found ways to motivate and engage their team sitting remotely. People in the field found ways to operate without the direct supervision. Okay. So that's a lesson that, something has to happen, it happens because, unless it is pushed to you're pushed to the corner. Third and most importantly, the way I see it is, there has to be a lot of mindset change. As I said, the next generation is digital savvy. They have to be more empathetic, more patient with the older generation. The older generation have to be more, I would say, adaptable and flexible to be able to cope up with the new reality. Okay, we see a lot of in my organization also, a lot of senior leaders struggle to do a Zoom calling, etc., because they still struggle. They're not able to figure out how to put the camera, how to start, how to off. Okay. When they have to they deal with the students or let's say the freshers who are much more technologically savvy, it really creates some sort of imbalance. Okay, probably both the parties have to work towards to bridge that gap. I think academia can really help in that sense. It can really prepare the students, the next generation, to be much more empathetic, much more patient, much more aware of the fact that the world has changed for many. While it may be very common for them, for the older generation, the thing may not be the same. Okay. Secondly, it may start creating some sort of a, the L&D intervention sort of a thing to be able to prepare the older generation. I'm again using word older and newer generation to be able to cope up with the new reality, which I think is very, very important. And it has to be done outside the industry. It can't be done within the industry or within the businesses.
Wonderful. Some great insight that you shared there. A lot of insight that you shared there. Rajesh, would you like to share it, please?
Yes. The current scenario in an IT services, IT industry today is while everything is virtual, there are complexities which are creeping up. For instance, the journey starts from the recruitment space, right? We in a completely virtual environment of assessment, there are many possibilities that can arise. One is there is no time. You have an ability to do interviews online, offline, able to contribute assessments through ability to show how good your talent is. People can record interviews and then look at it later whenever they have time. There are many methods of assessment that has come up to look at who is the best person, who is the right talent, and what time frame and what cost they can come in. Everything is now becoming seamlessly possible. Right? So these were in existence many years back. Today, that has become the norm. There is no other possibility. Therefore, the explosion of the ability to go borderless, go to towns, cities, villages, where talent is present, And with a good internet connectivity, anything is possible in IT industry is the scenario that is evolving now. Added to that, there was an old concept called gig economy, right? That is slowly coming into high-end space. The concept of overseas development centers is becoming very thin, diluted. That means within the same network, you can have a person not necessarily within the same boundary of four walls, but they can be in from multiple countries, but working as a team. That possibility has started now, and therefore the clients do see only an outcome. They exactly not being able to spot out who does what, how it is done. It is up to the organizations to figure out. And if they are able to bring in together and give their product and service to the client, nothing beats it. But all this are easy to say than getting done. Reason for that is humans bring in some complexity. Not everybody thinks alike. Not everybody does things alike. And there is a possibility where many of these aspects, which can be inculcated in the digital world for their own benefit in the future. For instance, between Pavel and Nishit, not many things have been covered, extremely important for the future to happen. But at the same time, if you have to go to these age-old traditions, generations or maybe centuries back, the concept of ethics, integrity, honesty, all that is coming into foreplay now in a major way. The reason to say that is, for a person or an organization to trust upon an individual or an employee, you have to sign NDAs, you have to sign contracts, you have to do many, many things to feel comfortable that, okay, here is an individual whose thoughts and actions and effort, everything is channelized to a particular job and for which he's being paid. But if you're exploring this in the digital economy or the way in which we are getting into, this part becomes important. The ability to show integrity and ethics need not be only through contracts. It can be much more. It has to come inborn. How do we get that inborn? It is about the exposure when they are young, when they are in the learning phase, when they're getting coached, both for a life as well as for a living. And that's a space where I think this digital economy or the digital industry worldwide can bring in certain focus and help people of the future to be much more tighter in their work ethics. The reason I'm bringing this is we are seeing wide variety of thoughts, actions which is coming in, which is not necessarily 100% cohesive from an outcome point of view, right? That's part of the side effects of digital. And that is something which puts in a lot of hurdles, too many assessments. Therefore, people spend time, waste money, and in the process, the outcomes are getting deferred. The right good ideas getting into action, and therefore an outcome is getting delayed. And that has an indirect impact on many of the productivity norms for the humans. So that is an area which is also going to become important. It may not be told, or it may not get paid. It may not be the most important. I see that as becoming much more stronger foundation for the future to evolve with. And that is something which we need to have in mind, apart from many other important things that we wanted to achieve. So this is one dimension. The other dimension we are seeing is we are, over the years, the last 20, 30 years, the possibilities of opportunities, I will say more than possibilities, opportunities for a human being to contribute is getting immense, diverse, I would say. And this is becoming more and more opportunity across the borders, which is now becoming easier. A person in India need not be tied up to an outcome that has to come from India. It can be to anyone, any other country sitting in India. Same is the case that we are able to bring in diversity virtually. To all this, what happens over a period of time, a person gets to know what is their passion, what is the natural ability of that person to align to a particular activity, and what differentiates a job to a contribution becomes much more clearer. Right? As people age, as the people spend more time in the organization or in the industry, they evolve over a period of time, and then they find out, okay, this is where I want to be. And during the process, not everybody is spot on in getting it on day one. They spend a lot of hard work, effort, money. People around them go through the process. Organization spends money to shape them. And after maybe 10 years, they figure out this is not what I want to do. This is something else I want to do, and it's becoming too late by that time. So this is a second area where definitely there is a huge possibility that the digital space can bring in, and academia has a huge play in that space. The third aspect is about the networking part. While the current generation networking is amazing in terms of an ability to reach out to people across the globe in multiple channels and multiple ways, specific outcome-based contribution and getting things done is still tight. It's still not sharp. It needs a lot of coaching, mentoring for people to get that. And it is so easy for people to get distracted. While there are entertainments which has to be kept part of the life, when it comes to a particular working collaboration and making an outcome much more sharper, has to be a different kind of a coaching that has to happen. Not every institute is able to achieve that. The last component is about the concept of certain institutes as the coveted premier, tier one. They are being called as the best of the best. All that has an opportunity to get merged now. If you look at an young person with a great amount of intelligence and ability to contribute, they, because of their geo or the financial background they are in, or in a political background they are in, their ability to get to know the best is being highly limited. In a digital education world, these are likely to become affordable, and at the same time, equivalent opportunity can be given to all the aspiring students across the globe. That will bring down the so-called grouping of institutes as based on today's context of what is best, what is not best can be further diminished. That and a future of talent can blossom irrespective of wherever they are currently, right? And that is going to have a huge impact on the future industry, and that is going to be beneficial to everyone. So these are my thoughts on the way the current situation is folding up to a future that can be much more exciting of what we are in.
Wonderful. Some great insight. All right, I'm assuming you want a little bit of perspective of Japan here, and maybe I'll add a little bit of a global perspective as well in kind of what's going on. So setting the scene in Japan right now, actually Friday, they declared a major pandemic in Tokyo. We had the most cases of any Friday in the last 9 months. We had 680 COVID cases in one day in Tokyo, which for me, when I look at the global perspective in the most populated city in the world, that is ridiculously low. In the context of things, if you look at, so for me, what's been the one word I would describe this period of time is not ordinary, but extraordinary. There's no time, I'm not a historian, but no time to my knowledge in history when we've been able to look at the world equally at the same time in the same type of crisis and situation and see how the world reacts, see how the different cultures act and react, and see how things kind of evolve and how they've been evolving and so many different levels. I think it's going to be one of the most fascinating kind of data and research that we'll look back on in a year or two or whenever this is all over with. So it's the first opportunity really to see how the world would react to the same kind of situation. There's lots of indexes been available, but I think this is going to be the true index moving forward. For Japan, it's been very interesting because Japan is not very digital, actually. It's a very paper-based, they have this thing called Hanko society. People go to work. They're used to going to work. They're used to being at the office all day long. They're not used to being at home. A lot of people, after they retire, they go home and they go crazy because they're so used to working that they don't have any hobbies. And so it's shifted things in the mindset dramatically in Japan. Japan in the Edo period didn't allow people to enter Japan. It was a very closed, isolated country. We're an island, so we're back in that situation again right now, which is kind of interesting. Having to be self-reliant. What's been extraordinary, I think, and a little bit, Rajesh mentioned something along these lines, is I think it's the first time we've really started to think about what's our purpose? Why are we here? We've really connected with nature and we've connected with each other again as humans and really hit reset and given us time to really truly look at who we are, where we are, and why we're here, which to me has been just, of course, the depths and the sicknesses have been sad. And I know that the soil community has had some of its members who've passed or in intensive care, but it's been an extraordinary opportunity for the whole world. And I truly hope that we embrace it. When you talk about the normal, for me, it's really hard to really talk about what the new normal is. In many ways, to me, the new normal is what we make it. The new normal is what we decide is the new normal. The new normal is really how we move forward. I wrote a book about a year ago, and it was basically, I interviewed 150 people asking them how they saw Japan in 2030, what their vision was for 2030. Now, a lot of those predictions have been accelerated dramatically because of the current extraordinary situation that we're in. And so for me, it's where we are right now is in a time of reflection, a time of really thinking about where we are, who we are, and where we can go. And that here is a possible new normal for us. Is this what we want or don't want? Where is the balance between the human connection and utilizing technology? And so in Japan, we've seen a surge of people moving outside of the city center of Tokyo and being more in nature, where it was the opposite for many years, everybody moving into the big cities. We've seen the country really thinking deeply about the rural areas and how to reconnect with the rural areas. We've seen people worried about their food. So the connection with farming and farmers has been strengthened to a degree that we haven't seen in a long time in Japan. And in Japan, we have this kind of situation where people they studied very hard, very literate society, very well-educated society. They got into a company. That company became their family. That company nurtured them. And they'd stayed with that company for 20, 30 years. And now all of a sudden we're in this period of time with change, this exponential change like we've never seen before. And a lot of these older gentlemen don't know how to react to this pace of change, this digitalization. And so it's a really, really challenging time for the upper management in Japan right now, who are not used to really having to make decisions, rapid decisions around rapid change. So I would say in a lot of ways, Japan is in a crisis. Japanese companies have a lot of money and they don't know what to do with it. And the last thing I want to share is in the context of India and Japan, if I look at all of the countries in Asia with the most potential to really collaborate with Japan, India by far is one of them. And there's a lot of points of synergy. So when I have a vision moving forward, I really hope that there's a lot of things happening between Japan and India. And I think both of them complement each other a lot. And in regards to the future of learning, it's been, to me, I've been almost ashamed to say I've been involved in education for many years because I think we've been cheating our children out of their future because we've had a 20th century learning model that really is so outdated. And this has been a wake-up call. It's been a wake-up call for parents and teachers. I remember seeing a kind of a little bit of a comic strip that somebody sent me. And it was, Joey, listen, you got to be nice to the teacher. Oh, but the teacher doesn't know anything about math, anything about science. The teacher's not very good at writing. And then the girl, Mary, said, come on, give mom a break. She's trying her best. So I think for a lot of parents and teachers and everybody in the education world, it's been a huge wake-up call, including for us at GZenCon, which we were highly analog before all of this. And so I think hopefully the vision and hope that I have is a really balanced world where we're using technology to allow us to access what we need to access, to use it as a tool to make our lives better and give us time to really do what's important, and that's to be human and to be with each other. So my vision for 2030 and moving forward is how can we use technology and tools to allow us to be more human, more connected with each other, and more connected with nature. Anybody else? We have a few minutes left around this kind of vision part. Anybody else want to share a little about their vision or what you might see for learning and education? Any of the panelists?
Let me add, I think Rajesh spoke about security, equally so about trust and confidence building. And I think there is a trade-off there. It's one of the themes that actually emerges, that while we are trying to democratize learning and share more knowledge and information, equally so there are security concerns that organizations have to deal with. So there is a good, healthy trade-off occurring in that space. If you talk about the future of learning, it really is the intersection of three different worlds coming together now. One is human psychology. And, we've always talked about self-actualization and keen and active learners and keeping them curious, right? Childlike curiosity. Equally so, there's rapid digital adoption now. That's another world that is seamlessly kind of being woven into the field of education and learning. The question is how willing and how prepared are we to actually adopt and embrace that. The third world is actually of development impact. Now, really that marries to what are the larger goals we're trying to fulfill. And those may vary depending upon the country you're speaking of, right? In our country, for example, there's a huge problem in terms of the quality of education, in terms of the access being provided, in terms of equal opportunity, in terms of the penetration of mobile, and that being made education being made available through that mean. So I do believe that while we try and change mindsets, influence behaviors, which is all about human psychology, we equally provide a conducive environment. Because let me talk about corporates and take that as an analogy. That corporates have always wanted these keen and active learners that would always be self-directed and take on the onus of upskilling and reskilling themselves. But the environment itself, which is constitutes of various facets, be it the tech that they're using, be it the alignment with their own corporate goals, be it the ability to measure and manage progress in relationship to upskilling and reskilling within the organization, that itself is fragmented and broken. So it's like wanting a healthy human being in a polluted environment. And that isn't possible. So as students, even though students come from the mecca of learning, right, in terms of and make this transition into the corporate world, I think there is an equal onus on part of corporates to create that conducive environment, because we know that you can pick up bad habits very quickly. Clearly, that's something that we need to be mindful of and watch out for, that this transition, you actually nurture that curiosity and don't break the spirit of the learner as they make this transition into the corporate world. EdCast did a research of 104 leading companies, and we call it the Learning Health Index. Corporate India currently is operating at 2/3 of its potential in terms of being qualified and called a learning organization. And the attributes of a learning organization are the ability to create, curate, assimilate, and apply knowledge as needed as the business and the conditions around it keep changing. So imagine we're already handicapped, right? We are operating at 2/3 of our potential. And now the pandemic has further accentuated the problem. So perhaps it is a tall order. It is a big challenge that we are faced with. And I'm glad at least the silver lining of the pandemic is that the urgency is known. And when you're in survival mode, then as Pavel really rightly said, right, there are no ifs and buts. And that's disappeared from our vocabulary because you just have to solve problems in an agile manner on an ongoing basis. That is the mindset we have to inculcate with students, is problem resolution. The ability to be an agile worker, the ability to continuously upgrade and be self-directed, the ability to take initiatives, the ability to collaborate in a virtual world, the ability to drop the I and be part of the we, the ability to be part of a team where you recognize collective intelligence and the power of collective intelligence far supersedes individual intelligence. These are just things that have now, while we may have spoken of them earlier, this is the new normal. It's not going to change, irrespective. Even if the vaccine comes out, there are certain things that are here to stay because there have been business benefits for organizations. I mean, there's also been a huge opportunity to save money, right? You just look, earlier, the conventional wisdom of the old thinking was you can't have remote workers. But there's been a ton of saving on account of just challenging that conventional wisdom to say, you don't necessarily have to be in a physical space all the time. I can understand in certain trades, in certain professions, in R&D, there may be that requirement. But clearly so not in every job, in every function. There are better, cheaper, faster ways of getting work done. And that's what a smart worker or a smart organization needs.
Wonderful. That's a good segue into the challenges. So the next part that we're going to kind of discuss is what are some of the major challenges we're facing right now? What are some of the major challenges we're facing moving forward? Rajesh, you want to start this off?
Yeah. One of them is it's becoming difficult to have standards established. I'm talking more from skill competence, which is required in the industry for both an organization, an industry, organization, and the people associated, who are currently the employees or the future employees part. If these things are not having standards, then the academia also finds it difficult to manage. So if we are talking about the future of digital world, we talk about the product companies who first create the base, the platform for the subsequent organizations, service providers to start creating more, an ecosystem around that platform, right? But that is a space where we are unable to get a common unified standards achieved. Because of this, we are creating multiple modules of complexity for an individual to learn more, while modules are required to make things finer, better. But if it is not having standards, it becomes very, very complex to coach, educate, learn, and deploy, and thereby make a meaningful contribution at an affordable cost. All of them is not coming through at all. That is a big challenge we are facing today. How do we achieve is something, obviously it's a huge collaboration. It needs a commonsensical way of achieving together at an industry level. Bodies have to be formed. In India, we are talking about NASSCOM. In every country, there is such organizations which is striving together to establish common mode of doing things better. But we are far away from reaching the required sanity in that space. So that is a defining moment which can help people to do better. Otherwise, learning skills every 6 months at a premium cost is just not an affordable way to move forward. Because that is one major challenge that we are facing today. The other challenge is about giving the confidence to the client. Hey, we are here. It is up to us. You have a problem. We are here to solve the problem and to establish a governance which will give them the confidence for them to see a meaningful outcome. Right? In that space, we are seeing, because of this non-standards which is there, an ability to consistently deploy, govern, at the same time deliver takes a beating. This is an outcome of the first point I said, but it has got a huge challenge in the way in which organizations as well as the industry can scale up and provide confidence to the future stakeholders. Is a gap that is existing in. That's the challenge, biggest challenge that we are facing from the IT sector.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Pavel, please share some insight.
So in terms of challenges that are really becoming a problem for the way forward is one, there's a, if I were to really sum it up, inertia and fear of unknown. Okay, it is there at the organizational level, at the leaders level, at the new entrants level. From a company standpoint, inability to see capacity for taking tough decisions, which impacts a lot of people, including themselves, is one of the biggest impediment. From an individual standpoint, it's a change of mindset. I talked about it enough. There has to be a change in mindset of both the existing as well as the new lot. And you used the interesting term called analogous, generation. So the previous generation, if I have to say, was analogous. The next one is the completely digital generation. The R generation is sort of neither analogous nor digital. Okay, it's a task. It's hell of a task for everyone to kind of get aligned to and come to the common ground. Okay, in the new way of thinking. Earlier, it was not that so important because there are other ways that you are able to manage things. For example, there was a physical proximity. There was a water cooler discussion. There are a lot of opportunity for people to figure out, deal with their understanding, misunderstanding, clarifying their point of view, the kind of collaboration, much more. In a new digital world, where there's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of physical segregation, all those things become even more important, and even more difficult to begin with. Lastly, is the workplaces are going to be very, very different. In the future, there would be a hybrid model, irrespective of the nature of industry, be it completely digital industry. They still have some offices or industry like us where the digital workplace is not possible. So there will be a hybrid set of models, hybrid set of workplaces within the organization. And there has to be a lot of agility, a lot of flexibility for people to be able to seamlessly work in different setup in the same organization as a quick succession. That to my mind is going to be the biggest challenge. And we have to figure out ways to deal with it. Nishtay, we should beautifully put it that we have to prepare everyone, and I will put it both the existing and the new generation, to be able to ready with that set of mindset change. Some of it would have to happen externally. Some of it has to be done internally, where people have to take initiative. And the way I see it, in many cases, it is going to be a matter of survival. So those who are able to adjust, they will survive. Those who are not able to adjust would really, really struggle.
Wonderful. Ichai?
So I guess the set of challenges are different depending upon which stakeholder you refer to. And let's start with corporates. The biggest challenge for corporates is actually seeking that clarity, correct? The unknown. And because of the pace of change, because there are so many unknowns in the fray, clearly that's something that leaders have to continuously work through, driving the organization from chaos to clarity. But that's expected of leaders. That's the expectation of leaders today. The other challenge that I see are the individual employees within the organization. And I'm taking a slant at learning because that's where academia and the industry connect occurs. The biggest challenge in organizations, other than having fragmented, unprepared learning ecosystems for the new normal, is individuals themselves cite paucity of time. And a typical worker would spend 1% of his or her time in a week on learning and development. So paucity of time is definitely a barrier. The ecosystem itself not being conducive is a barrier. The culture has always been one of push in terms of learning within an organization, in that large proportion. And I'm making generic statements just to emphasize a point. But clearly here you want that self-directed, keen, agile, continuous learning habits from every employee. There are unknowns, to Rajesh's point. The question is, I don't think and I do not believe that the era of standards will continue. Just given that the standard itself is changing every single day. The question is, how are you harnessing the power of AI to ensure that your skill taxonomy within the organization keeps relevant, recognizing the changes in the external environment? Now, we do have bodies, not to take away the importance of standards. I think you can, in routine jobs, in more stable environments. There are sector skill councils across all industries governed by NSDC that actually lay out occupational standards and qualification packs for jobs, and those could be adhered to. I mean, we are running a big program with NASSCOM for the last 2.5 years that has over 500,000 people being prepared on standards that were published in the area of emerging tech, right? So whether it's AI, robotics, analytics, and so on and so forth, you can do that. But the question is, of course, I mean, things will continue to change, right? The half shelf of skills. So there I see a problem again, is organizations struggling with this clarity on, well, we don't even know what the future looks like. We don't know what skills we have to build. And therefore the learning and development systems or architecture must have a certain amount of stability and must have a certain amount of dynamism at the same time, right? So this old conventional based boxed in infrequent learning events is under pressure. I mean, you cannot run with that thinking and with that paradigm in this new paradigm. Now let's come to colleges or academia per se, right? The criticism has always been that, you know, the curriculums are outdated and so on and so forth. So the quality of the curriculum doesn't mirror the needs of the industry, and that's been a long-standing criticism. I think it's improved because of industry actually taking a participative approach and spending a lot more time trying to cultivate that talent, because it was finally hurting them. And academia being more welcoming of their participation, because ultimately they had to place students. So clearly, I think there was a symbiotic, synergistic relationship. Now, having said that, I think and I look at it again at a macro level, the teacher population, the teacher-student ratio, the competence of the teaching population. I'm not as worried about the students, by the way. So I do believe that they will anyway find a means to upskill, reskill themselves. And there are many avenues today. The question is the teacher, the facilitator, the knowledge broker, if I may, playing the part? Are they leveraging technology? And I make this about tech because I just believe that it has helped organizations and academia leapfrog. So it's not necessarily that you have to run and walk and then run. You can actually start running right away. That's the advantage of using technology today. And to all the attendees, please get on to Future Skills Prime. This is a government-led, there are many free courses, since we're going to have many students, that are available in these areas. You can get an AI foundation course from Microsoft. So the participation of the OEMs, I'm taking the example of tech, right? Cisco, Microsoft, and so on and so forth, actually have taken on a goal for upskilling and reskilling students. So there's a lot more participation occurring between industry and academia. And remember, industry was always struggling with the leaders never had time to spend within the organization, forget spending it with academia. And that's what now technology has made things more effective, more efficient. You can monetize assets, and assets in the sense of knowledge by reuse, right? You don't have to always physically appear and again and again and again. The question is, you have to impart that knowledge and find a way of doing so in an efficient and effective manner. So those are some of the problems that actually it's multi-layered. I mean, I can take each single stakeholder and kind of layer it in terms of the number of problems and the complexity and the severity of the challenges that we are faced with. So it's not a simple one by no standard.
Great. All right. So you actually wonderfully, the panelists hit on most of the areas that I was thinking about in regards to challenge. I think on a level for kind of industry and workplace and digitalization, it's finding that balance, going back to the human connection. There's a lot of people in Japan, actually, there's been an increase in suicides. People in Japan tend to live in smaller spaces. So their living room is their bedroom right next to their kitchen. And so if they're spending all day in one room, it tends to get quite stressful. And thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask you to share that link actually for the Future Skills Prime. For everybody to look in, there's a futureskillsprime.edcast.com there, which I think would be very valuable for everybody. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in solutions as well. But so it's that the challenge of that human connection and being with others. It's one thing to be online, but really to be connected and to be with each other is really important. So I think one of the major challenges is trying to figure out how we can find that balance moving forward. And there's going to be augmented, and we'll get into solutions in a second here. The other area, and it was also stated, was for the teachers to really shift to being more facilitators or guides by the side. And we really need to, as educators, think very carefully, why do we exist? Why is there school? What is our role in the ecosystem? And we have a very important role as educators in the ecosystem, for sure. And one of them, though, is dialogue and discussion. And a lot of times in the typical setting that we've had before, it's been one way. I've been trying my best during this panel discussion to add questions, and I would love to see more of the participants answering some of the questions or sharing your thinking. Because in a normal class setting, you have to wait for one person to raise their hand and then they can share something. That's a major challenge, I think, in being able to really have interaction with each other. I really liked the comment about chaos to clarity. I thought that was really wonderful, because it is kind of a chaotic situation. And how can we find the clarity in that? And I think everybody's trying to understand and find that clarity. And I think that's one of our big challenges right now is find that clarity. And one of the big challenges, most people don't know who they are. And we can get it. I think it's a great segue into the solutions side of this panel discussion, but most people don't really know who they are. They don't know what their skill set is. Most HR and organizations are not assessing people based on your skills or your future skills, nor are most organizations actually training you towards the future skills. And so maybe that's a good segue coming into the solutions for the challenges that we have. And maybe, Rajesh, maybe you can start just to kind of mix it up a little bit, if you don't mind. So what are some of the solutions to the challenges we have? What are some of the solutions you see that would help us move forward for a new normal that we all want to see and have and embrace?
Some of the areas are unconstrained communication is something we have started off with. Especially the pandemic has shown that the productivity has gone up in terms of remote working, where people are really stretching beyond the normal work hours in office to get the job done. Productivity has increased, and therefore there's a lot more satisfaction that we are seeing from our clients. The industry has posted record amount of revenue, order booking, and at the same time profits in the last couple of quarters is because of this. It is a very, very focused activity that every employee is doing. One is there is not much he can do beyond home. He's locked up there. Second one is the secured environment, which is the best secured environment for every human is their respective homes. The productivity is definitely increasing, right? What is the area that we are missing out in this is the ability to keep them on the same page. When I say on the same page, in terms of the communication aspect of what is happening beyond what they are seeing in the computer screen, is something which you had an opportunity in real life in office. And that is something, an information that is completely cut off. So we have started with a lot of communication about many things which normally don't get communicated on email or on a chat box, on a chat post or within the organization intranets. That is one thing which we are trying to bring in the bondage of trying to being together. The other thing which we observed was, especially the new employees, fresh employees from campus and from other organizations in the first 2-3 years of experience levels, they had an opportunity to see how certain things are being
One of the right.
Yeah. So that is, am I okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So, so the young people were not being able to observe the current method of working, which sometimes you may also call it as a culture, right? A culture of an organization is defined by the people's actions and behavior and policies, right? Those actions are not visible to the people who are completely cut off in a remote environment. We are trying to build them in terms of a virtual space. Currently, the recognitions, the annual rewards or accomplishment events are now being completely done online. Just to give a flavor of what is happening beyond the project or the department they belong to, is being showcased. The reason is when you don't get that, you feel that you are doing an activity without knowing what the outcome for the larger space that you are contributing to. And that is trending to give space for them to think otherwise. Am I engaged in an organization or I'm engaged in a project for which I'm contributing it? It's a huge difference, both. And this is trending to an attrition as an outcome because of this. So solution comes with extremely transparent communication, ability to tell members on well-being. There are a lot of actions which they don't even know that they need to take care of when they are at home. Well-being sessions are now become a norm, which even if they don't attend, or even if they don't have a time to attend, we are ensuring that these links are recorded and posted onto them so that whenever they have time, they will be in a position to take it up. The communication and at the same time ability to show what needs to be done beyond a job is also getting addressed here. The third one is life and living is slowly become merged together. It's all about living. The concept of life is diminishing some places, especially in the younger crowd, which is causing a lot of stress levels and burnout, I would call it as. So we want to be very, very, aware of this aspect. So there is something called compulsory shutdown on a Friday night, a Friday evening after 6 p.m. We are sending messages saying that it's your time, it's your family, friends' time. Please log off. Ensure that nobody calls for a meeting. Told not to get into any such conversations which is beyond the work hours. This is to bring in kind of a view stating that because you are locked up, it doesn't mean that you need to have a life beyond this. The reason for, I'm sure many organizations has this and much more deeper levels they do. The concept is being aware is becoming important from a continuity of employee and the productivity aspect of it. The second aspect, I would call it as solution part, is about the upskilling, right? Upskilling normally happens only from an account or from a client project that they belong to, right? He also mentioned it. What is coming out here is how many of us are taking effort of what should be the next 2 years roadmap a person should take. Maybe he is on one particular stream of technology. That doesn't mean that that stream alone will be the future skill for that individual or for the organization. Ability to cross-train is now becoming a very, very important aspect. So we have brought in a career roadmap stating that for every individual, irrespective of where they belong to, if they continue to do what they are doing, what is the roadmap that they can reach for 2 years? And if they are able to add on skills and the technology aspects, how that can make a differentiator to the organization and also to the personal growth is a view that we are trying to make it out. This happens during the quarterly feedback sessions as well as the annual appraisals. That gives a view in terms of what we are seeding that thought in the mind of that employee, so that they are able to take certain decisions much beyond what the project team can provide or a particular client project can provide. That is another aspect of development, especially in the solutioning space that is coming up. So these are some of the things which we are doing. Some are short term, some are certainly not beyond 1-2 years. That's today's long term, I would call it as. Is the view that we are currently working on.
Thank you. It's It reminded me of one of the challenges we didn't share, which is connectivity when we lost you there for a minute. I'm sure connectivity is a big issue in India, and I know it's a big issue in Japan as well, moving forward. Nichai, do you mind?
So I'm going to take a deep dive at tech, just given my passion for tech and the use of tech specifically as it relates to academia and corporates. One of the challenges and again, a generalization, academic institutions haven't been great adopters of using tech. I mean, that's just the reality. They've got legacy systems in terms of tech that they currently use to operate and navigate and provide. That's what kind of holds the environment. And that world is disrupted, right? Clearly, if you want to scale education, you want to make it efficient, you want to democratize education, you want to leverage the power of AI. So the question is, how many academic institutes today actually leverage the power of AI? And there'll be a fraction, perhaps, a minuscule number that you can actually name. Now, the power of AI is the following, as it relates to the field of education or learning. One, the ability to connect. So the question is, how can you connect knowledge brokers and individuals wherein you can use a knowledge graph, right, to actually orchestrate people's connections within the institute, outside of the institute, in terms of industry. That's one. Two is the ability to curate. So how can you create new knowledge? How can you tap open source content, as an example, right? There's a wealth of open source content, but it's just not contextualized. And using the power of AI, you can contextualize that knowledge and make it available. Three, how can you collaborate? So this peer-to-peer learning that we've spoken about, that ultimately actually skills don't reside in individuals. They reside in teams. And that's the new thinking coming out of MIT in terms of collective intelligence, that people learn from people and skills belong to teams, not individuals. But having said that, clearly, can you use the power of AI to collaborate a lot more and in a meaningful way? And finally, computate. So the use of gamification, as an example, to drive and reinforce behaviors, the use of nudge theory. These are all aspects of AI that can inculcate the right behaviors. And the reason I keep emphasizing behaviors is because those are the most difficult to alter and change. Changing mindset, changing behaviors. If you look at from an organization or from an academic standpoint, I want to now table the word experience. So what's coming to bear now is specifically all individuals, right? Just as they expect a customer grade experience when they use any app or are exposed to any activity. Similarly, in the field of learning, in the field of education, we have to be mindful of experience. And therefore, how do you stitch a learning experience that actually boosts learner engagement, right? Keeps the learner motivated in a goal-oriented way. And that's easier said than done. Now, what is important in this scenario is therefore having conversational technologies, softwares, that don't break the experience of an individual, right? I'm just going to give you an example of what happens in organizations today. So there are a lot of productivity tools, right? Collaboration tools. Let's take Zoom or let's take Teams. And there's been a surge in the use of collaboration tools in the last 9 months. I mean, just explosion as far as the use and adoption of these tools is concerned. And now that's become part of our daily ritual. There is no other way of working but to use these collaboration tools. In organizations, learning was always seen or has been positioned as an island. So for working, you went in one direction. For learning, you went in another direction. Now, with the use of technology, which is now popularly coined as learning in the flow of work, and working in the flow of life, right? So can you actually make learning assets available in productivity tools? Can you actually, while I'm on Teams, while I'm on Zoom, while I'm on Salesforce, while I'm on a CRM application, can that same learning not be made available to me? Why do I have to go and log in into another system and remember my password? And it's just a broken experience. How can I leverage, for example, a Google Chrome widget as an example? So every 6 minutes, an individual actually gets onto the net and finds and surfs the internet looking for information. Can you not, for example, redirect the learner to say, these are the content assets, learning assets already available with us on our platform within the organization? Why are you going and finding information outside? So it's a breakthrough, because what you're doing is redirecting the learner and ensuring that there is a greater utility of something that you spent money and effort curating, creating within the organization or within the institute. So I'm using the same parallel. An academic institute must run on the principles and the infrastructure used by a corporate. That's the only way individuals will be prepared to make this transition from point A to point B in a seamless way. It's not disruptive. The other aspect is, let's spend time and attention. I'm coming to now academia. How much time is spent on the course curriculum? How much time is spent in preparing for examinations? How much time is spent on preparing yourself with future skills? How much time is spent on apprenticeships and internships? And you'll see that the percentages where the least amount of time is spent is in fact got the highest correlation with employability. So the findings are actually the time spent in the course curriculum or preparing for examinations has the least impact on employability. And therefore, many organizations have said, we don't even need a graduate degree. We just need people who come with a particular skill set. And that skill set, now, whether it's tech or whether it's professional skills in terms of communication or collaboration, or in terms of judgment or decisive thinking, or in terms of tech, right? In terms of AI or cloud computation. The challenge is that's where the emphasis should be. And therefore, the government of India has taken this bold step, right? It's starting with 412,000 people that it wants to upskill through this program. So this is an initiative with MITI, which is the Ministry of Information Technology and NASSCOM, powered by EdCast. And we're going to run this program for 3 years with 412,000 people to be upskilled through a certification that is provided by the SSC. The areas have been selected by BCG through a research. So which are the top 10 emerging technologies that people need to be upskilled in? Professional skills equally so. So we're looking at wholesome thinking. Great participation from all the premium content providers, equally so by the OEMs. I spoke about this course from Microsoft. So it's the coming together of academia, because all the students in different institutes are logging on and just basically consuming this precious wealth of knowledge that's been curated for the standards, that finally now this is affordable, it's acceptable, it's credible, and ultimately that's what we need in education. Strong alignment, strong participation, government funding, incentivization. So $60 million has been set aside for this, wherein every individual that actually upskills will be given a rebate, an incent. This is where the government has said that skill development is at the heart of transforming nations. Corporates have recognized this and are spending far greater time on skill development. Academia must take a skill-based curriculum approach. must ensure that a lot more time is spent on future skills. A lot more attention is paid on what will change, what habits are required, what mindset is needed as they make this transition from academic institutions to industry. Now, that's part of the solution. I mean, I can give you more and more ways in which this can happen, but I recognize that I may need to stop.
Hey, one observation, you can give your input on how it can be further enhanced. When we had the employee connect as well as the future employees who are about to join during the notice period, we have a learning content for them to look at it and learn during their joining time. We found that 72% of the users are actually using that tool between 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Okay. And the learning seems to be maximum at that point of time. While these are recorded content and content which has already been designed to learn, we find that an interactive session at that peak hour of their learning can make it much more effective in terms of outcome. What do you think about this?
It's a great question. I wouldn't pass judgment if 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. is a better time to learn or in a different hour. I guess that's what it depends on your learning habits, right? I'm more of a late night person than an early morning person. So I try, and I guess many of those habits are even formed in early years. It depends when you study. You would have noticed many of your friends got up early in the morning in the wee hours and studied then, and you studied in the late night hours. So that's not really the point. The point is, you know, when people are learning. So for example, if I knew that, you know, a lot of my learners actually consume new content on a Saturday. On a Friday, I use the nudge theory, making it known that something is going to come their way in the area of, let's say, Salesforce effectiveness or change management or any topic. So earlier, in organizations, if you ask this question, who are your keen and active learners? And if you ask the same question in academic institutions, it will be based on the scores that people have through an exam in academic institutions. It will be based on the number of hours spent completing compliance, code of conduct, IFRS courses in an organization. And that is far from the truth. That is not the definition of a keen and active learner. A keen and active learner learns from experience, from the exposure, from education, from the environment. And that's the ability to know your learner using real-time performance support, wherein you've got analytics being used and you can actually then take proactive decisions to be able to provide the knowledge needed just in time for that learner, for that employee, for that individual to apply to a project, to a task, for a meeting. That's ultimately the value of learning. The value of learning is not completion of number of hours that has been mandated by an organization. It is only valuable when it is applied to ensure that there is a better performance outcome, or you see a shift in behavior which is intended. I don't know if that answered your question, Rajesh, but that's my view.
Pavel, before you jump on, I'm gonna have you jump in just here in 1 second. If you can just, go ahead, please, Pavel, please. Go ahead, whatever you want to say.
I'll not take too much time. Rajesh, it's an interesting thing. As long as they're doing on their own, okay, they will choose whatever time they want to choose. The moment you start pushing it something on a certain time period, you will see a totally different behavior. And, I think Michelle put it very beautifully that if you only focus, if you only focus on the numbers of hour tick in the box sort of activity, the real meaning will never be achieved. The real meaning would be achieved that if you can somehow use the information and using nudge theory and other, whatever tools that we have to our disposal to, somehow subconsciously tell people this is the best time for you to learn and pick up a new skill. That probably would work better. Otherwise, let's say I'm just imagining if you were to set up a town hall virtual town hall at this time slot, I'm sure a lot of people would be absolutely rebellious that, hey, one hand you say that you have to have a work-life balance. Now you're pushing this sort of a thing at this time, or even though the same guys are actually doing study and using their laptop at that time period.
Pavel, do you want to share? Okay, let's go into, if you don't mind, just in the spirit of time, we have 25 minutes left. And please, and I saw a few questions that have come on and we will answer those questions and go to the comments as well. Thank you. And if anybody wants to add any questions or comments, please do so. Could you focus on what can we do now, Pavel? What can we do now? And think about this, the students that the audience is mainly students doing a master's program. What can they start to do now to really help them move forward?
Yeah, so let me try and pick it up from the organization standpoint and then try and come from an academia standpoint. So one thing is very, very clear the way I see it is the work today is increasingly becoming a team sport. It has always been, but now it is becoming even more. It'll be more complex, varied, very fast-paced. Routine tasks will be automated. There will be more and more so-called knowledge workers. High impact team would be not going to tackle non-routine work. So, the mindset and the generation dealing with work would be very, very different. The organizations need to be rewired. The old hierarchies, the old workflow, the old decision-making setup would not work. It just cannot. The hierarchy would definitely shrunk in a very different manner. The level playing field would be even more, available to everyone. Pay structure would change. The way we look at and compensate people for their work and effort would change. Rajesh talked about it, that performance and productivity metrics that have to be redefined now, because you no longer have that personalized discussion-based outcome of performance. It has to be probably not a lot more impersonalized, data-driven, etc. From the academia, I think the implication would be that are we, preparing our next generation in that direction? Are they able to deal with a situation where they probably will not have some sort of a mentor supporting them on a daily basis? So are they able to pick up learning, pick up new skills on their own without any sort of a so-called compulsion, etc.? How are they becoming more and more independent, so to say, in terms of picking up new skills and new learnings? That, to my mind, is going to be a biggest, contribution which can be done from academia. The same thing has to be done in the organization also. The people internally would now have to think very differently that how they're going to deal with the new set of, new generation, which is very, very different than what they have seen in the past.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So what comes to my mind, I think for a lot of the students is, so what? Or why am I doing this? And the answer shouldn't be, oh, because this is what we do, or this is how we do it. And I think that's probably what's going through a lot of the minds of students when they think about when we're doing stuff. So I think it's really important to share with them the why and the purpose behind it. If I was to think about how to frame this, and I've been looking a lot at AI and the power of AI, and I think it's going to really transform a lot of things moving forward, is the concept of digital twin. If you think about how we have a digital footprint that's growing and growing and growing, and its memory doesn't change. Our human memory changes, but the digital memory does not change. And more we have this other memory. And if you think about it, Dr. Google right now is a lot of our memory or a lot of our resources. So how is this synergy, like I said before, the creative collective intelligence? And how is this balance coming? And one of the important things is to know who we are. And most people don't, as I mentioned earlier. So when you think about the future skills, prime.edcast.com, which is to me very similar to what they've been doing in Singapore. Singapore has been doing something very similar for a while, and it's one of the other countries. So that'll give you the opportunity, one, to know who you are and know where you need to build your skills. And AI very precisely will also document who you are and document where you need to go and how you need to learn. So it's a very, very good guide moving forward, I think, in many ways for us. In regards to the workplace or academic organizations, I mean, we're really fortunate that we're in the soil in the Shizenkan world, because there's absolutely a role to have mentors, to have visionaries, to have people to connect us like we are today, in many different ways to help us move forward. And so it's really thinking about, how can we use technology? How do we use the digital twin? How do we use AI to move forward with the future skills and a deeper understanding of who we are, so that we can reach our potential within the creative collective intelligence, within the team. So if you know, for example, these are my skills, these are my strengths, these are my passions, this is what I love to do, and you connect that with your team members and you have that same understanding, how powerful would that community be? But the challenge we have now is that's not being done. It's not being done in the workplace, and it's not being done in the academia. And so we're really missing out on a huge opportunity, actually, to truly bring people together in a way that would be really powerful.
Patrick, if I may just come in for a minute.
Of course, please.
You may be happy to know that, as you perhaps are already aware, that Shizenkan Soil and the ISE Business School, which has campuses in Barcelona, Munich, and New York, three of us are launching on 26 January a new course called the Future of Capitalism. And students from all the three campuses, along with another top school in Brazil, they will be joining this course. And global leaders from all over the world will come to the class to actually, so each session is like Paul Polman of Unilever will be there, for instance, and people like that. So this is like a fantastic new opportunity for the students of these four campuses to collaborate, to co-create a learning experience about the future of capitalism. So I think this is something very, very interesting. I just thought I'll mention this because you are talking about the subject of collaboration.
It's absolutely, and I think that's the power of academia moving forward. And this is what's wonderful about being part of this community that we are, is that we have very forward-thinking, very agile, but very deep in wisdom and a huge collective intelligence. And so therefore, I think that the soils and the Shizenkans and the Iseis in the world are not going to go away. They're just going to get stronger. And we just have to think about how we're going to adapt together with technology, as we have already done so, as well as time zones, right? So what's the future of a classroom going to look like? How is that going to be? Who are the master teachers in the world? Who has access to them? And that's what's beautiful about what we've been creating, is this access to the wisdom and the master teachers, and not just getting some teacher who's so-so, who happens to be in your neighborhood, who is the best teacher in your neighborhood. How do we leverage this to bring things together, and the power of that? Let me just, I think in fairness to the students, there's one good question here that any of the panelists want to answer. Where's the line between home and office life, right? How do we find that balance? What's the solution to that home versus office life? And any ideas and good practice around that?
I think I shared one stating that compulsory shutdown on Friday evening is one possibility, so that you are reminded that this is the time that you have to end your work. The second one is every employee today has an app in terms of recording the what we call as the time of login and time of log out, just to keep their attendance intact. So through the app at 7 p.m., if somebody has not recorded that they have completed the work, an alert is sent saying that it's time for you to log off, right? So that is a very alert which tells that it's time for you to look at your personal life. The third aspect is about the deadlines of completing certain projects, right? Given an option, some of them, individual perspective, do it, what can be done in 5 days, they do it in 3 days. Some of them take 7 days instead of 5 days. There are multiple aspects of this. So if we have to look at a defined way of rewarding somebody who completes a project on time, they should have the extra time for their personal lives, so that they acknowledge, saying that the organization is not trying to overcharge them, and give them the space that they are capable of enjoying. So some of the things which are virtually today being done, and much more can be thought through in this space.
Let me jump in. Though I'm a terrible example of work-life balance. I don't know if that concept necessarily exists. In fact, today was my first day of leave in this year. So, but since the invitation was from Soil, I said okay, one exception. But I had clearly reminded myself that I do need 8-9 days of recharge. Having said that, I think there is again a danger here, right? Number one, I think organizations must strive for a flexible workplace. Number two, individuals need to exercise self-management. This doctoring of, log in, log out, adherence to schedule, now it may be needed. I'm not being dismissive of a practice when it was required and it met a certain outcome. The question here now is, you're building a flexible workplace. There's going to be remote working. The focus is on getting work done in teams. Ultimately, that's it. And now, therefore, there has to be an understanding and agreement between teams and teams of teams in terms of how work gets done. And equally so, organizations need to be empathetic. So while there is empathy, there is understanding, there is flexibility being built. There is also convenience, by the way. So if I now play the devil's advocate, I worked going to a physical office for 22 years. And for the last 2 years, I've essentially had a home office because that's the nature of our work. I've saved a ton of time on travel. I mean, just physically going to the office and coming back. Now, what is dangerous is when I left the office, at least there was a signal to the brain that I'm going home. And herein, there is no kind of automated signal that I'm being reminded that, look here, you're eating your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I've started standing. So you see me standing actually now and doing this because essentially there is damage to well-being, mental and physical, which you have to be very conscious and mindful of. So find different ways. I mean, I was speaking to CP Gurnani the other day, and he said, you know what? After 7 o'clock in the evening, I kind of pencil it in, and I must go for my walk. So no meetings during that time. Now, everybody may not be able to afford that luxury and that liberty. But I'm just saying self-management. I think, to my mind, self-management, awareness, and a conducive, flexible, friendly, empathetic, understanding environment is the coming together of what this can really look like.
Wonderfully said. I think the other aspect is everyone has to have a goal. For instance, hobbies is one of them, right? When you during many of the key decision making on roles, one of this interview questions is about the hobby. Many think that this is a very casual question they ask. The interviewer just wants to know what it is, but it has got a lot of meaning in that. It shows how disciplined you are as an individual when you take up a hobby. How do you explore and how do you make it big for yourself? It defines what you will do when a project is given to you. Right? For instance, somebody says, I like running. You will go to the extent of asking them, okay, a marathon shoe should be what weight? Right? And to that extent, people get into the discussion. Just to test the individual, saying that how deep a person is. Otherwise, it's all about I read, watch movies, listen to music, read books. It just dies, hobbies dies at that. But as you rightly said, the question is about the individual discipline, having a goal for themselves, personal goals for themselves, and making big out of that personal goals. Then you will always look forward for the time. You will look forward when I can steal some time to make it happen. That's the difference.
See, if I were to add, the culture in an organization is sum total of all the behaviors that are getting rewarded or penalized. If the organizations, the leaders kind of promote a culture of people working late, odd hours, they themselves are working late, sending emails, the late night, setting up late night calls, meeting, etc. You can never expect the individual to behave in a certain manner. The thing that you want to do. Of course, it's a discipline from the individual standpoint. It's also the support from the organization also, in terms of inculcating that behavior. And I think it has to work in hand, but we have to keep in mind the flexibility has to be there. It cannot be forced. It has to be done on its own. People have to find that balance that works for what works for them and what period. Some people would want to work extra hours in one particular week and want to probably go easy on the next week thereafter. So I think the organization has to be flexible, yet be very, very mindful of the fact that what kind of behavior you want to promote. If you start promoting people who are spending more time at work or giving input at the, let's say, 12 o'clock in the night, that probably, you'll never be able to achieve that proverbial work-life balance.
So learning in the flow of work, working in the flow of life, the same concept.
Exactly.
I don't think the word balance exists, because then that shows, if I were to plot it,
You're doing jugglery.
it's probably giving up some of this and giving up some of that. And that's not optimized using economics. So you want to get a 10-10, right, on work life. So how do you get a 10-10, not a 5-5, if I were to plot it on a graph? And that's working in the flow of life. That's what you need. Otherwise, you're always going to feel a sense of sacrifice on one front or the other.
Yeah. Very well said.
It's interesting how much that we miss in life, or how much, like you said, we sacrifice because we think we have to work, or there's this kind of framework or structure or pressure for us to have to do something immediately. Or and often, which is interesting, so often people are working not because of something they love to do, but because they need the resources and the money that they receive from working. And so where's that harmony? Why should you miss a soccer game or something special in life because you have to work? And where's the balance of those two, and really finding that the synergy there? And that's where I really see the power of technology. Throughout the day, we've heard a lot of different people share different perspectives. And one I like to share is one of my favorite quotes is the purpose of life is a life of purpose. Find that life of purpose. And if you think about a lot of the way the world is changing very fast, 15 years ago, so many jobs didn't exist that exist today, nor did the technologies. But there are people who are experts in these areas of technologies now, because they've spent the time and they went deep into learning something. And hopefully that was something that they had a passion for, whether that was to do with biology and biotechnology, or that's something to do with material science, or something to do with computing or data, depending on where that passion is. But I would say to the students, find something that you really love, find an area of technology, and combine that with making a difference in the world. One of the wonderful things that's happening in Japan right now is this future vision called Society 5.0. And Society 5.0 basically is taking the fourth industrial revolution that came out of the World Economic Forum to another level. And the whole concept is DX, they call it, digitalization, and the SDGs or ESGs. And the harmony of those two coming together will create a better world for all of us to live in. And that's kind of the main framework in which Japan is falling into right now, is finding that synergy between those two. And so you think about the younger generation, especially in Japan, they don't want to go and work for the big companies because they want to have a feeling of having a purpose in life. But they don't have the skill set to be entrepreneurs in Japan, because the education system really trains them to be good factory workers, good soldiers, good citizens. And there's some really positive in that. However, the entrepreneur or intrapreneur skill set is not really there. And so it's really moving forward and thinking about the students that we're addressing here today is have that purpose in life, find that SDG, find that some problem that you can solve, and then find a technology or technologies in which you have a passion for and you can connect that and make that your life's purpose, and use the power of the technology to help you do that. Anybody else on the panel want to have closing comments? Any questions from the audience? Anil, I know you have something to say. Go for it. I can see your mouth. I can just.
I was enjoying the silence, because out of silence, sometimes there is reflection, and out of that comes a new kind of conversation. So no, I don't have anything particular to say, except that I really enjoyed listening to all of you. If I can only say one thing, which is that I think whole purpose of education is the capacity to ask new questions. And so if our colleagues in this, in the student community, if there are new questions coming to their mind, then that is what this session and this conference is all about. So I do hope that the stimulation you have provided will lead to new questions, which our students will take responsibility for. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed listening to you. And in between, when I was trying to munch on some peanuts or something else, I wanted to shut off my video. I didn't want to embarrass you by looking at the side of my stuff. So that's why my video was going off in between from time to time. But thank you. This has been really wonderful, Rajesh. I've had deep admiration from ITC, right from my relationship, very strong friendship and relationship with the ITC group. And Yogi Deveshwar was a dear friend. Unfortunately, is no more. And when I was the founder of Aisher Consultancy, we did a lot of work with ITC on the Six Sigma initiative. So very fond memories of that. And thank you for being part here. Nishchay is, of course, like a fellow traveler, soulmate, colleague, co-founder of Soil in many respects. So thank you for doing that. And Pavel, I don't know if this is Gati is part of the same organization my friend Mahendra Agarwal had created.
Exactly.
Is it the same one? So
Exactly.
Mahendra and I have go back a long way. If you are in touch with him, please give him my regards.
Absolutely.
Both him and his brother, we are very wonderful friends. And Patrick, thank you for your enthusiasm. And I like your style of involving the audience and asking questions. So thank you for doing that. That was stimulating. And now my student, Devduti, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all the esteemed panelists for enlightening us with their words of wisdom and experience. Thank you for that, sir. I would like now to invite Ms. Niveda from the Human Resource Cohort of School of Inspired Leadership to share her reflection and takeaways from the session with all of us.
Thank you, Devduti. Good evening, panelists and all the attendees. It was thoroughly inspiring and enriching for me to listen to each and every panelist discussing on the very most important aspect that all of us as students are dealing with right now. It was quite a challenge for me to note down the key takeaways, because each and every word that was uttered was quite important for us. However, I would like to sum up few of my learnings from the conversation that just happened. So the whole context was set on how the pace of innovation that is accelerated by the pandemic is taking a very rapid change in terms of shaping the future of work and workers as well. This in turn has created endless possibilities, and there is a huge demand for exemplary talents. So while talking about this supply demand challenge, here is where academia is playing a great role, and the need to fulfill the demand created by industries. So Mr. Nishay very well pointed out that students have to be kept in the center, and government, NGOs and academia has to foster just in time, just in hour skill building and create a very conducive environment for learning. A lot of stress was also laid upon how the ability to continuously upgrade and importantly collaborate with each other in the virtual world, and drop the saying of I and adopting we, and how the power of collective intelligence stands much higher than individual intelligence, which Soil has also been teaching us right from the beginning, will make all of us a smart worker. So there is also a huge mindset change which has eliminated all the ifs and buts, which is again fostered by the pandemic, and things which have been unbelievable in the past are happening right now. And no doubt the newer generation are becoming more resilient, agile, and flexible in coping up with the new normal and the new reality. There were also points which touched upon the challenges for teachers and the importance to leverage upon the technology, especially AI, to create again a conducive environment for learning. So when we addressed upon the challenges, so we spoke about how difficult it has become to create standards in, especially in terms of defining competence and skills that are required for industry. So creation of multiple modules which are highly complex for an individual to learn has been on the trend right now, and this can only be achieved through huge collaboration. Mr. Patrick also very well pointed out to it as chaotic clarity, and this can again be overcome by ensuring connectivity. So the solutions that were laid down by the panelists were ensuring transparent communication, focusing on the well-being measures to remove the burnouts that has been caused by the digital economy, and being self-aware. Organizations also have to create a standpoint on creating an experience which the learners have to be very mindful about and motivate ourselves in a goal-oriented way. So these were some of the most important key takeaways that I had. Thank you so much for the panelists for creating a very great environment in just 2 hours, which actually fostered our learning to much greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Niveda. That was really well done. Good reflections and takeaways that you put forward. With this, we come to an end of the panel discussion today. On behalf of the Soil team, I would like to sincerely thank all the 4 panelists here, Mr. Suri, Mr. Chopra, Mr. Chandran, and Mr. Newell, for accepting our invitation and gracing this event with their virtual presence. Your words truly hold deep meanings, exhibit rich learnings and experiences, and are worth pondering over these unprecedented times. Thank you so much for being a part of our conference today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Stay safe. Happy learning.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So now we would have a short refresher break, and we will be right back at 4:15 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 7:45 p.m. Japan Standard Time to witness the students' presentations and another keynote address. Thank you and stay tuned.
Thank you.